It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here.
With Barnet Bain. Good moment.
Barnet, your voice.
How do you like
your voice is iffy.
It's definitely iffy. It's my voice has been around the horn.
Yeah, you've been running hard, my friend.
And it's caught up. It's caught up. The chickens have come home to roost. So forgive me, listeners. You're going to have to lean forward and pay closer attention. And I will be speaking less, though. So
that's actually not a bad thing.
That's the very good news. That's the very good news.
Oh, so we've spent some time together lately. We were at the Association of Transformational Leaders last weekend. And you were off to another leadership conference after that.
Well, then afterwards I was at another. I was speaking at an event in Las Vegas. And what struck me in both of these events, what is very beautiful are how many people are have so much to say and are willing to speak about issues to do with consciousness and spirituality. And some of it is very powerful, very beautiful teaching. Some of it, not so much.
Be honest, Barnet. Be honest.
So much. So there is this whole thing about spiritual teaching and spiritual teachers. So for those of you who are driving in your vehicles and are listening to this show, you have yet to learn the nature of our guest, who our guest is, and what our guest has to say, and the distinct lineage that our guest comes out of.
Well, let's get these people up to speed.
But before we do that, let's get them up to speed.
Yeah.
Now I've lost my place. So it's not only my throat that is sore, apparently.
Your brain's hurting too.
My point being that our guest comes from a lineage, and part of that lineage involves taking certain vows.
Yes.
And I was struck by one vow particularly that has to do with vowing not to represent himself as a spiritual teacher.
Interesting. Because that would be the first thing I would think of, even in considering this.
So with that sort of creaky in the throat and creaky in the execution introduction, I'm very, very pleased to welcome Shamar Rinpoche to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Rinpoche was born in 1952 in eastern Tibet. He was recognized as a reincarnation of the Shamarpa and confirmed by the 14th Dalai Lama. Rinpoche is also known as the Red Hat Lama. He is the author of several books, the most recent being The Path to Awakening, and we are very, very grateful to welcome him here to Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome to the show.
Hello. Yes, thank you.
So, welcome, Rinpoche. This vow that I read someplace that you took as a very young man, as a young monk, that made certain distinctions about how you represent yourself, and I read something about it was a vow specifically not to represent yourself as a spiritual teacher.
Yes. You mean about the monks, is it?
Yes, precisely.
Monkhood.
So this is very intriguing to us because, as you know, there is such a resurgence of spiritual interest, particularly here in the West, and so many teachers and so many who represent themselves as spiritual teachers. And so we're intrigued as to what that vow was created to safeguard.
Yes, so far I was joined in the Monkhood for a short time, several years, and then I switched to, it's called Bodhisattva vow, and then I'm still remain in Bodhisattva vow. Monkhood means in Buddhist monkhood is very, very, very. One has to be totally renounced 253 vows you have to keep it.
253.
253 vows.
Wow. Wow.
Not wow, vow.
Is mainly, it's a discipline. You are totally free from the worldly life and do meditation only. And then in order you're not misleading the devotees, and you are not misusing the position as a monk to collect the wealth from people. Therefore, then the rules has been increased during the time of Buddha among the many monks, and then it became 253 precepts that you have to keep it. But mainly it's just discipline.
Yes.
For example, like collecting money from people and hiding it, and then pretending as a very renounced monk, and then pretending very, very holy, and such as,
So they are
Yes.
precepts that help develop character and values in young monks, particularly. Is that how they're designed?
Among the young monks are maybe naughty, but the grown-up monks are the more, could be some of the, among the many, but some could be greedy and then misuse the monkhood, monk's image. That happened during the times of Buddha. Of course, it is still happening. And to prevent that, then do this, it's a big community as a practitioner, as a renounced person. But then, if someone is misusing it, then that will be not good for everyone. Therefore, rules has been organized by Buddha. And so, like person like me, who is always in a lot of work for administrations, it's many inconvenience there. I also announced in my website for the question of one of the book writer called Eric Current regarding this matter, and I explained there in my website about the monk's vow. And I'm in right now as Bodhisattva vow means to have a commitment to have compassion and helping living beings. And I'm in that position right now.
I love it. So there's so much that's so interesting to me. As we were mentioning, Barnet and I spent the weekend in a leadership conference really organized around consciousness. And what I hear you saying is that the vows, these 253 vows, and the inner discipline, the external discipline being the meditation practice, to promote an inner discipline where the quality that one might associate with being a teacher or a leader is inwardly rooted. Is that the intention?
Yes. The main is inwardly tamed, inwardly well controlled.
Yeah, and this is really about a kind of clarity or a purity of intention. Is that accurate?
Yes.
I love how you described the young monks are naughty, and then the older monks could have a tendency to get greedy. And so these 253 vows are really, again, a way of organizing one's attention to really be clear in this vocation.
Yes, correct.
And then how many vows do young nuns take?
Nuns have more, about 400.
400.
Wow.
400. See, now my wife would say that's always the case.
400.
My wife said
they can multitask, so that's why they can handle more.
She said to me this morning, she said, "I see you have a cold. It's a good thing it's a man cold and not a woman cold." Because a woman called is the same as a man called, but you also have to cook and clean and do the laundry and answer the phone. So women seem to have, or they always seem to have more vows.
Yeah. This is powerful. So the nature of vows, I think, is fascinating because when, at least in my own experience, when I have proclaimed something publicly, and not just proclaimed it once, because I think, of course, when you say vows, of my marriage vows, what I took with my wife. And I think one of the mistakes that a lot of people make in the West is to proclaim the vows once and then sort of forget about it, right? Because most people don't repeat the vows. And yet, something my wife and I have committed to is repeating the vows on a regular basis to root us, just like what you're talking about. So we have a clarity or a purity of our intention. Does that make sense to you?
It is.
So there's something in the vows in and of themselves. It's not a one-time thing. It's something that, in my mind, you have to repeat. And again, what you're talking about, a kind of discipline where it grounds or roots you in an inner quality of being that then gets expressed in your actions and behaviors.
Yes. That time, meditation means you put all your time for meditation, and you want to be enlightened within the life, and then many of the people, the community of meditators became large, and then they had to depend on the offerings from people for their fooding, and then at the time of Buddha, then he had to make a rule that not to misbehave with the devotees who offer the food, and also he made only lunch, no dinner. After 1 p.m. you will not eat anything. You can drink like hot water and juice, fine, but anything that you can drink everything that it gives the reflections. Otherwise, it goes into the soup line, so it was also not allowed. And according the meditation goes with the biology. And they said that if you eat anything heavy in the evening, it's develop drowsy. It's not good for meditation. Therefore, they completely stop eating dinner.
So
such as there are many disciplines to keep your commitment, to protect your commitment efficiently.
I love this language too, to protect your commitment and the nature of so the commitment to the meditation, or even if I could
commitment for meditation, like meditation, you will not be distracted by, as I told before, you will not be distracted by collecting offerings from people. You should not be distracted by showing arrogancy as a renounced holy person, such as.
Got it. Yeah. Well, what I'm aware of is that the meditation as a primary orientation. In other words, this is the primary thing as and I'm going to go farther and say as a way of being, like a contemplative quality, right? And so then the choices for your life, at least as a monk, are to organize around maintaining this contemplative quality, including how you manage your biology and so forth. Is that accurate?
Yes.
I love that. So fascinating. And just again, coming from the West and not coming from the Eastern traditions, yours or others, it's such a different concept. But it's interesting that it's becoming so popular now on the West, as Barnet was sort of pointing to, that so many people are talking about meditation. I'm curious, why do you think this contemplative way of being is so attractive to people in the West?
I think everyone realized that without inner peace, without mind has peace, there is no ultimate happiness in the life. So everyone realizes it. So therefore, they think the meditation is clearly the method for that.
Well, Rinpoche, we have to pause for one moment to have some commercial announcements.
Okay.
So please, audience, listeners, and Rinpoche, please all stand by. We are going to be right back on Cutting Edge Consciousness after these words from our sponsors.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnet Bain and our guest today, Rinpoche. Fascinating conversation.
So I have a very practical question and an ultimate question, and they're the same question. So this is what a paradox. Rinpoche, would you share with us?
Sure.
What is enlightenment?
Enlightenment is, according the, let's say, according Buddha, when he was doing meditation, he understood mind has two characters. One character is the superficial character, which is totally diluted. And the deeper nature of mind is completely free of delusion. And while he was doing meditation, he discovered more and more that, and then he went into that more deeper. And then when you could completely overcome of the delusion, then the pure part of the mind is totally bloom up, and that's the enlightenment. Like you wake up from a terrible dream, and then all the what we call samsara, or up and down and happy and unhappy, all this dualistic problem is under control of the mind, the pure part of mind which you fully develop. That's the enlightenment.
So
as I always say that enlightenment cannot be described by our normal human language, because no one has the experience, so terminology is not there. Like I said, last night I also gave the talk. I also did say that our language is like cat language for describing the wisdom.
So what I am hearing inside the word, between the words, is that there is an awakening to, as your language, to a dream state, in which we begin to realize, as we do in the night dream states, that we are both subject. I'm my little character in my dream state at night, and then I wake up in the morning and I realized I was also I was the creator or the involved in every other aspect of my dream as well, not just my subject in it, but also everything else. So we wake up and realize that there is a oneness in my dreaming that allows me a different perspective. Is that consistent?
Well, when we are sleeping, we have dream, but when we wake up, we again move to another dualistic experience. Yes. So we are not yet. When we wake up, it is not that we are wake up as enlightened. Yeah.
Yes, but I'm asking if we're not waking up enlightened, but can we wake up with an awareness, with more of an awareness that, oh, I was very identified with this last dream, and now I realize that I keep switching dreams, so maybe these individual experiences, I don't have to be so identified with them.
You can do that, yes.
So my question is, inside of those little dreams, inside of awakening from one understanding of this is fleeting to the next one, this is fleeting, there are certain consistencies, often of values and character. Some of them are nurtured inside of the kinds of practices or vows that we discussed earlier. Some of them are beautiful and good and true and benevolent, and some of them are not so constructive.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that in my own life, I'm exploring these issues, and lots of that has to do with how much I cling to my own memories. What is the relationship between memory and karma?
Well, memory is something that you stored in your mind, and then when mind became very clear, then you can remember. You can remember up to the beginning, up to the past of the beginning of this life, or then very clear mind, they even can remember before this life started. So that is depends how much your mind is clear. As much as peace you have in the mind, then clarity will develop. And as much as clarity you develop, then you can extend your memory up to the past life or before the past life.
And where do these two come together? So I understand that the clearest mind can track and is aware of a thread of experiences traveling back maybe generations. But where do they come into a kind of coherence, or where did the memories and the karma enter into a kind of pure state? I mean, I don't know if I'm overstating, but is there a place where the memories and the karma resolve?
No, karma is among the many mental thoughts, mental events. Karma is one which carries a kind of cause, like something good you did or something bad you did. That karmic thought carries cause, that which can produce some result. And as far as concerned about thoughts, there are many thoughts. So you can remember all, you can remember some. Karma is kind of mental thought, but all mental thoughts are not necessarily karma. The memory keeps same, just like what you did yesterday. You can remember now. Where it's kept in, we call it ground consciousness. Our mind, our consciousness, classified by 8. The ground consciousness and affliction, the consciousness of affliction means like clinging self, me, like that. And then the consciousness through eyes, consciousness through ears, such as like faculties. So totally, consciousness of mind also there means like in the stream of the mind, there are between one thought in which past and second thoughts which existing, there is a space of consciousness which has not any connection. I will say non-dualistic thoughts. There, between each of the dualistic thoughts, there is one very short moment of non-dualistic thought. That is the faculty of mind that giving the opportunity to arouse the second thought. So the stream of mind goes like that. So consciousness, the 8 consciousness. The space between thoughts, the non-dualistic thought, is actually not separate from the ground consciousness, but actively separate, naturally not separate. And memory keep in that, usually. In that space of mind, then all the memory is stored. And then as long as your mind is totally overwhelmed by the delusions, then you will not remember everything. You can remember something. If someone has good habit of having good result of meditation in the past, like contemplation, they they can have a good memory. Like you said, one who can catch the dream is also connected to that habit.
Yes, and there is so much inundation now in the modern world.
Yes.
So much inundation and information and energy information and data. We're so overwhelmed with it that perhaps this overwhelm is contributing or can contribute to a kind of surrender or a capitulation where the mind just says, I just can't anymore. And maybe that is one of the reasons that mindfulness practice is beginning to flower so incredibly and so ubiquitously all over this country.
Subject, yes, you're right. The subject of mind is very big. If you go into the investigate about the mind nature, then you can investigate a lot according to the neurologists, but according to the Buddhist view about mind, then the basic concept is totally different. But some conjunction is there, what they discovered. Consciousness is immaterialistic. Immaterialist. We call consciousness is a formation of mind only without substantially existing. But existing as a mind, which neurologists does not understand because they don't see by eye. And though they themselves have clear consciousness, but still they don't understand it because their mind is totally focused on something that exists, that you can touch, you can feel, you can see by eye as a color or shape.
So they hold it as like an epiphenomenon of chemistry, like biochemistry.
Well, and there's also an attempt to segment it and compartmentalize.
Slice it and dice it.
Right. We want to see everything in its little pieces. And part of the consciousness, the stream, as you were kind of discussing earlier, is how this all fits together without feeling like we have to control or dominate it. Is that accurate?
Yes, correct.
You know, there's a lot to this movement in our country towards mindfulness. And I think Barnet was sort of pointing to it, that a lot of people are having an awakening, albeit a rude awakening, in that their lives are so caught in what you were sort of describing as this superficial or diluted state, and they're longing for a kind of deeper we talked about it earlier, an inner peace, and this place where happy versus unhappy gets resolved. So it's interesting because there's this movement towards mindfulness. What would you offer as a recommendation to someone who is just having their awakening? They're recognizing that their life filled with, superficial distraction, I think is the word you used earlier, isn't working, and they want to move towards mindfulness, and they're looking to someone such as you to say, how do I begin to embark on this? What are some practical ideas that people can start to move towards?
Well, if you just follow the technique of mindfulness, then you don't have to go into the investigating subject about mind. Is a big philosophy. So for the meditation, really all these philosophical views, understanding is not very, very necessary. Unless you can't understand mind is mind. Then if you could follow the meditation methods, you don't need that much the involvement in the subject, learning the subject.
But a very good place to start could be the path to awakening.
For example, I wrote a commentary of 7 points mind training. The first part of the meditation, the mind training, is the mindfulness meditation, how to develop the mindfulness. And then second, third are all then to increase the view of the mind up to the enlightenment.
So your new book,
increasing view of the mind, means by realizing the nature of the mind through the meditation, then you can increase it. So all the skills that you will develop and you will increase by yourself. Or meditation will lead you into the direction of enlightenment. But the first part is the mindfulness, which is the base of the meditation. So in 7 points mind training, the meditation of the mindfulness comes as the beginning. So easily you can start like concentration, training to your mind how to concentrate.
Mm-hmm.
Our mind is like wild horse, so you have to use a method to tame it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to tame it and build up the skill and the habit to stay on one level instead of raising like speedy water bugs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there is advice for our listeners in your new book, The Path to Awakening.
Yes.
How Buddhism's 7 points of mind training can lead you to a life of enlightenment and happiness.
Yes, exactly.
And we would like to recommend that to our audience, and we are grateful, Rinpoche, that you took the time today to spend with us, to explain some of these ideas, and to enlighten all of us to some degree, so that so that we can start on this path. Thank you so much for spending the time with us.
Thank you for the opportunity to explain about the meditation, about my path to awakening. Thank you.
Can I ask if there's a website that maybe some of our folks who want to find out more about your work, where you're appearing, things of that nature, is there a place we can send them to before we let you go?
Yes, there is a website called Bodhi Path website. In that you can get all the information about this practice, where to go to learn more. Yes.
Perfect. And we will put that website up on the Cutting Edge Consciousness website, folks. So if you want to find out more about this Bodhi Path website, we will have it on our website. Again, thank you so much for spending the time with us. For those of you listening, we invite you to stay tuned because Barnet and I will be back after the messages to wrap things up here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnet Bain.
Yeah. Well, that felt good. That was like a sort of psychic bath. I completely felt some of the tension that I've been carrying with my throat and everything else just sort of falling away. I had this thought this morning coming into the studio about coming to consciousness. And it took me back many years in time when I was a very, very small boy. I remembered something that you just don't see so much anymore. And I'm going to watch your face, Freeman and Spence. I'm going to see if there's a flicker of recognition in your eyes. Do you remember shows like Wild Wild West and The Virginian and all the Westerns and Get Smart, all these shows? But on every one of these programs, they didn't pull out guns the way they do now and shoot you dead. They would take the back of the gun and they'd smack you over the head.
Pistol whip.
I
love that.
Where they'd club you with like a piece of wood or something or a shoe.
I totally know what you're talking about.
People like on every program, they were constantly getting clubbed in the head.
I love that.
Everybody would like inflict concussions on everybody else. They would fall down, but then they would generally they would awaken after the commercial break, and often in an entirely different location. And what was it called?
Coming to.
Yeah, and it was always like Penny would say about the rifleman, Mark, the rifleman's coming to.
Yeah.
So this idea of coming to consciousness.
And the idea of being smacked in the head, just going back to our conversation with Rinpoche,
yeah,
the rude awakening that many of us have when we're so caught in this deluded or superficial aspect of the mind, right? He defined the mind in sort of two ways.
Yeah.
There's a superficial aspect and there's this deeper sort of universal aspect which we can tap into if we can quiet the crazy horse, the wild horse, as it were.
If you can come to.
If you can come to, yeah.
So
but it often requires a smack on the head.
Well, that's where I was thinking of this. It seems to me that it requires a smack in the head unless it doesn't.
No, that's a good point.
The more that the ultimate pull of life is an awakening, is coming to.
I love that.
Is an awakening to more and more of who we really are, the more true nature of things. And so the degree to which we are not open-hearted and open-minded about falling into that love, it starts to show up as a smack in the head. It starts to show up as a rude awakening.
Yeah, we get pistol whipped by life.
We get pistol whipped by life. And even then, most don't make those changes. In those shows, they would always fight again.
Well, it's always interesting, those shows. I remember Wild Wild West was a favorite show. There were sort of two options with Jim West when he gets smacked, or Artemis Gordon, his sidekick, was they'd either wake up, they'd be in a street fight, and they'd either wake up like on the dirt floor of some cave, or they'd wake up like in the
boudoir.
Yeah, exactly, in the boudoir of some beautiful woman. Which I don't know if that analogy, the metaphor keeps going, but the idea that there's sort of two kinds of awakening. One is really rude and one is not so rude. But,
so I guess we can wake up rudely by being in denial, by pushing away, by controlling, and by feeding more and more attention to the wild horse, as Rinpoche puts it, the wild horses of our lesser nature. And there's also the opportunity and the option of waking up to what is beautiful through beauty, through art, through appreciation, through compassion and great
and the developing, because I think what was so important about the wild horse analogy is that there are skills and habits that will tame that. And that, of course, is what meditation practice is. It's taming, at least from his perspective, the wild horse aspect of the mind so that we are less distracted and deluded by the superficial and more connected to a deeper, more pure consciousness, to use that language, where happy versus unhappy gets resolved. We're not connected to how things ought to look on the superficial level.
We cease
We're
running.
tapped in.
We cease running.
Well, and we even cease trying to control and feeling like, it has to look a certain way. There is an element in all of the mindfulness practices of surrender and acceptance. And the language, in fact, I think, which is often used is sort of a surrender. I think it was the Dalai Lama who said that pain is part of life, but suffering is optional. Suffering is the concept we have that it oughtn't to be a certain way. And the practice of mindfulness allows one to move through things that are painful without being so attached, because it's the attachment that causes the suffering, from what I understand of this tradition, and powerfully represented in the way that Rinpoche was talking.
Definitely. As you're speaking, it occurs to me that words like surrender, these are freighted with so many layers of meaning that trigger people. There are assumptions. I had a conversation over the last couple of days with someone who was speaking about faith, and I realized very quickly that they were not speaking about faith whatsoever. And so I asked her, I asked her to reframe her usage of faith and in a way like, well, I would really, really love to have absolute faith, but I am concerned that, and fill in the blank.
Right.
And then when she filled in the blank, it's that, well, it would be weak, or that life would steamroller me, or it would. There are so many layers of hidden meaning and charge below words, like below everything. But certainly, surrender might sound like a complacency. It may sound like a submission where one isn't contributing or active or
well, that might be the word active. An active surrender is an element of choice to let go of the way I've held something in favor of something else that is maybe deeper or more profound. I mean, the idea...
But it is not passive.
Not at all.
And people assume that it is, people assume that being, unless there's a doing function,
right,
that somehow a being quality, they assume that is, by its nature, not generative. It's an inaccurate assumption.
Right.
They also can assume that it has, they bring their own baggage to it. It's weak. We live in a pretty chauvinist world, so these are feminine qualities. We're doers. So there's just there's all of these things under something like submission. And one of the insights that I gained listening to Rinpoche is that, as you're creating environments in order to observe, to quieten and observe the wild horses of your lesser nature, you begin to understand their language, their patterns, and you begin to recognize them. They become a subset that's held in something larger.
I love that. I love the idea of the contemplative path, and even as a choice in the middle of the chaos to be able to choose I think of it in my own life as a pause. He spoke about this gap, right? This gap in the, I think we were sort of talking about it in the dream context, but larger is a gap between memory in a very immediate way and a larger context such as karma. And then and maybe I didn't understand him completely, which is also part of, but this gap, this language of gap has been used quite a bit, where we can create a gap where there is space to consider something more dimensionally than in these narrow, superficial ways that we've held it, right? And the easiest way to look at this is when we're quick to define something as good or bad, versus being in a kind of question or an inquiry or a space where it could be any number of things, and we're surrendering to something versus trying to order it and organize it into familiar categories. He sort of spoke about that even in the neuroscience, where the attempt to understand is in itself a kind of way of trying to conquer or control. And there's the Buddhist tradition offers a different way of holding the experience without having to crunch it down to that sort of dissection process of understanding it. Paradoxically, what's beautiful about where a lot of neuroscience is going, and some of the people who we know, Mark Waldman, Andy Newberg, others who've been on this show, who are seeing where the two are meeting, where we've done a dissecting only to learn that some of the principles of Buddhism can actually be explained in this other context, right? I don't know, but it's look on his face. I wove in about 3 or 4 topics into.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull some of those threads.
Pull. Find a thread.
I think that eventually everything mirrors everything else.
That's
back.
what I'm saying.
My deepest in personal knowing. It's not an ultimate truth. It's my highest, and it may be in the next 5 minutes no longer my highest. That life
beautiful.
Is not going to be explained in the dust of a blackboard,
right?
And that science is beautiful, and a closed loop. It will never handle the mysteries. It's a subset. Just as even numbers are a subset of a cosmology of mathematics, but you're not going to get an uneven number in a set of even numbers. So there are more things, as the poet said.
Horatio.
I don't think that science is, I love it when scientists trumpet that we've just found evidence for something in science, so now it's okay. Now it's real.
Now it's legit.
So now it's legit. And I know that there are many, many wonderful people that are working in that area. Dan Siegel, and so many others who are doing this incredible work, who are themselves both scientists and mystics. And there is a tradition in Buddhism. I know nothing about Buddhism. That's not true because I know this, so I know next to nothing about Buddhism.
Besides this, you know nothing. Go ahead.
There is a tradition of study where people devote themselves to studying and becoming experts in an area, and then they write a book. Or it's almost like doing a thesis that demonstrates and serves. It's not a ego trip. It is a place where you demonstrate for the service of others your mastery of an area so that it's beneficial to others. And if it is impactful, then you receive what is in a particular tradition was called an umbrella, and it might be an umbrella of peacock feathers. And then there was another kind of umbrella that signified that you were a multidisciplinary pundit. And that the more disciplines that you could express mastery in made you more powerful as more effective as a pundit. Not because you had the ability to drill down in a particular area, but also because you could pull back and see the overarching connectedness of all things. You drink too much of your own Kool-Aid. I think it was Buckminster Fuller who said, you become such a specialist that you lose sight of the system.
Wow, that's beautiful. So we are somewhere in the interdisciplinary realm, at least we're aiming for that here on this show. So we hope that today's show has enlightened our audience. I feel like it was a valuable excursion down a path that's very valuable. I know that.
It was a little difficult for me to penetrate some of Rinpoche's accent.
Yeah.
But then again, I suspect it's a little difficult for most of our listeners to penetrate mine right now.
But we hope that you'll be back next week because Barnet's voice will have cleared up, and we, of course, will be back with another guest to go on another excursion. So we invite you, of course, to keep coming back and joining us here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.